for joining the NCGA Sustainability Webinar Series. This is our fourth webinar. And today we have the topic of working with conservation foundations and funders. As NCGA works toward achieving our 2030 environmental sustainability goals, having information and resources available to support growers in their conservation efforts are key tools to stock in our toolbox. In this webinar, we will hear from two conservation foundations on their priorities, grant making objectives and process, and general tips for working with conservation foundations and other funders. Today, joining us, we have David Gagner with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. He is the Senior Director of Government Affairs and External Relations. And we have Paul Wolfe, Program Officer at the Walton Family Foundation. So first off, we will have Dave present a little bit about Dave. Dave began his career working on ethanol and oxygenated fuels, fuel issues while consulting and representing clients on the state, federal, corporate, and nonprofit levels. He worked for the National Association of Conservation Districts from 1999 through 2001 as Director of Government Affairs with a specific focus on the 2002 Farm Bill and developing the association's grassroots systems. Dave worked for Ducks Unlimited as their lead agriculture representative from 2001 to 2003, where he was one of the primary authors and partners leading the conservation community's efforts on passage of the largest conservation title of all times. Following his time at Ducks Unlimited, he went to serve as Chief of Staff at the Natural Resources Conservation Services from 2003 to 2006. He was a member of the management / leadership team responsible for staff of nearly 12,500 employees and a $4 million budget. He served in a variety of roles within the department, including the Department of Agriculture's representative on critical issues such as wetlands, wildlife, droughts, biofuels, climate change, and preparation for the next Farm Bill's conservation title. Dave is currently the Senior Director of Government Relations at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. He is primarily focused on private agricultural working lands, conservation for the foundation. Dave graduated from Bowling Green State University in 1992 with a BA in political science focused on environmental policy. Dave was in the U.S. Army serving in the 4th Infantry Division. Dave, if you want to take it away.
Rachel, I apologize for that thing being so long. I should have cut it in half before I sent it to Julie. Didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the newest member of my team, Michaela Brister, to if you can let her pull up our presentation here. Like Rachel said, I'm with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. I've been there now 16 years since leaving NRCS. I love it. It's been a great organization. And one of the big goals I had at the time was to really build a very large working lands program at the foundation. Our CEO, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Trandle, I'm not sure if any of you know him or may remember him, but he used to, he did his time up on the Hill for both House Ag Approps. He was working for Pat Roberts when he was in the House and was the subcommittee director for House Ag Appropriations, the subcommittee, for a number of years. So we really are, agriculture conservation is very near and dear to our heart. So I'm just going to run through some slides here. I know I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I am known for, telling stories, but I'll try to tell short ones today. So Michaela, go ahead and go to that next slide. And I did put my, Rachel and Julie have access to the slides, and my email address, if you need be, is david.gagner Gagner, Gagner at nfwf.org. And the reason I say that is if there's anything that folks get from the presentation on our end is please ask us for money. We really want you to ask us for money. It's something that really at the end of the day, our job as a congressionally chartered foundation is to distribute funds and to help create and nurture public-private partnerships. Congress made us back in 1984. So we've been around almost 40 years now. Our board is appointed through basically the Secretary of Interior, but that's secret code for the White House. And it also includes the directors of Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And like I said, what do? Well, we work on conservation for wildlife. I mean, wildlife is our primary focus. But remember this, every time you're out there, doing no-till, or somebody's working on the edge of field, or maybe we got cows out there and we're working on the grasslands, that's all got an impact on wildlife. So what kind of impact and what can we do about that? So what we do is we put together public-private partnerships. We're constantly out there trying to find pots of money so that we can match those up with other pots of money to work on priorities. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what we do. What are we not allowed to do? By law, we do not fund advocacy work. So when you're asking us for money, once again, please ask us for money. Don't ask us to fund advocacy work or litigation. We are by law restricted from doing that. We are a pseudo-government oriented organization. People will ask, are you public or private? And our answer is yes, we're both. We have, Congress does have oversight of us. We do get a small appropriation. On the other hand, we are a private 501c3 foundation. Next slide, Michaela. So those are just some of the basics about, we've been around 40 years and some of those things. What the heck, as I mentioned, what do we do and how do we do it? Well, we put together all these pots of money. We got 16 different federal agencies that we get funding from. So that's awesome. I mean, 16 different federal agencies, anybody from the Department of the Navy, Department of Defense, all the Interior folks, a couple different agencies at USDA, EPA, all over the place. And what do we do with it? How do we, we put those partnerships together. And we do that with all those companies. You'll notice on this slide, you've got some, non-federal partners, some businesses. It might be Walmart. It might be FedEx. It might be, we just recently signed up Smuckers. And Smuckers' interest is about dairy cows. They've got some products that take milk, so they're worried about the dairy end of it right now. That'll probably move into some of the other products that they need for their, for their supply, but it is what it is. You'll notice on the bottom here, how do we do our work? NIFWF does not go out and do the work on the ground. That's not our expertise. Our expertise is the grant making aspect, putting those dollars out the door, raising those dollars. So you'll notice at the bottom, here's just a real small, quick sampling of a couple different organizations that we might give grants to. Might be a conservation district, might be Illinois corn growers for that matter. It could be, anybody. We really don't care as long as they're doing the implementation, they're meeting certain standards, et cetera. So you'll see a variety of organizations there at the bottom of the page, all kinds of different groups doing all kinds of different things. Michaela? This is just kind of a, like I said, we do grants. So it's not just that we throw money out and make a grant. There is a process for that. And this is just, it's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time on, other than to say that when you ask us for money, and remember, ask us for money, we want you to look at, you know what, I'm in the state of Colorado, and we want to work with our growers. Nick, I am picking on you because you were, I heard your name there and heard Colorado, so I'll pick on Colorado, which, by the way, we have an office in Denver. But what we would look at is, what are the interests of the partners, the people that are funding? Well, also, what are the interests of the grantees, those people at the ground level? What do they want to do? We're going to put together a strategy and figure out how we can put some money on the ground out there that meet the need, the conservation needs, the financial needs of the different organizations involved. Now, one of the things that we're definitely not looking to do, we're not looking to take any land out of production. That's not the effort. We do a lot of easements, keep a lot of cows on the ground. We try to keep a lot of people row cropping when we can. So it could be all over the place, but we want to have that conversation to say, what is it you want to do? Go ahead to that next slide. So one of the things that we're always going to do is we're going to do our measurements and metrics. We're going to try and figure out, okay, maybe we want to have more Colorado cutthroat in that river. So maybe that's one of the things. And we're looking at, okay, we're going to improve this many miles of stream, but we're also going to do, we want to see that the increase in population is X. Now, remember, we're not taking, we're trying to work with the local landowners, those local operators, to see how we can get those wildlife results or those water quality results, or maybe those carbon results, but at the same time, having a positive economic impact for that grower, for that operator. And we're always going to be looking at, some of those different numbers that are out there. One of the things you'll notice on here is people, jobs. We want to help create jobs out there. We're not just looking to pay somebody to do the same old, same old. We want to see about getting jobs out there in the world too, because we also know about some of the impact on the rural communities. Go ahead to the next slide. What I've got now are just a couple different slides that are going to show us, Michaela, is your stuff still up there? You can see your slide?
It is. Can you see it?
I can't. That's a problem. So I might have to have you tell me what I wrote when I wrote these slides. I apologize, folks. I was having a meeting with the Senate Ag Committee, and that's why I'm in my car doing our presentation. So the next couple of slides are just talking about what we do as an organization, how we're doing some of the different efforts out in the field and getting things done out there. So that's one of the things that we're always trying to do. Michaela, you're going to have to tell me the titles, and I apologize.
No,
Rachel,
can everyone else still see it? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. This slide is building partnerships with farmers and ranchers across the U.S. This is the agriculture.
So Rachel, or Michaela, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk for a minute and just kind of go through the slides a little bit as we're talking. Folks, our biggest effort is partnerships. And I know it's starting to sound repetitive. I'm going to keep saying, partnership. But it might be a company like Archer Daniels Midland, and they really have a focus on cover crops. And what are we going to do for them? We're going to try and sit there and see if we can find some private funds, either from, say, other foundations or state money or federal dollars. We're going to combine those dollars. And then what we've got, in fact, what we have going with ADM right now is we're trying to shoot for a goal of 2 million acres of cover crops. And that's what we're shooting for. So we just had an RFP out. We're about to announce, I think, 5 different grants that are going to go out there and do that for the initial 500,000 acres of effort over the next year. Understanding that, we got to get a lot planted here in the fall. So there's some of that. We might have a partner like Altria, the tobacco company. And I throw them out just because they are an ag company. But one of the things that they wanted to do was they really wanted to have good outreach to their members. And I mean, the people that they're buying from, those tobacco growers. And they started in Kentucky. And we had a partnership with Kentucky Fish and Game and NRCS. Everybody put skin in the game, a little bit of money from everybody. The staff came from Kentucky Fish and Game, and they were both agronomists. They go out and they sit down with tobacco growers, not just on their tobacco growing. They'll sit with them on anything they're up to. And they're going to work with them on meeting sustainability standards that Altria is looking for from that, or, from their growers. They want to meet certain benchmarks, but they also understand that, well, where's the money going to come from? Where's the effort going to come from? Who's the technical expertise? Farmers have jobs, y'all have a job. You're farmers, you're ranchers. So how are you going to get things done? Who's going to do those extra costs? And that's one of the things that partnership has worked on, making sure they can take care of. It's been a blazing success. We're going on 15 years now. It's expanded to Pennsylvania all the way down to North Carolina. from the initial efforts in Kentucky. You know, another big effort we have going right now are with dairies. We've got Danone, we've got General Mills that's doing some dairy work. We've got DMI, the Dairy Management Inc. We've got, oh golly, I'm forgetting some of them. We got Land O'Lakes. We've got, like I said, a number of others. And the reality is, how do we help those folks? They once again want to meet certain standards. And what we're doing on that front is really helping them on their feed end of things. How are they feeding their cows? And we're going out to the growers that are providing that feed and working with them on their conservation practices, both from a technical assistance end and a financial assistance end. So I'll kind of wrap it up here and just say, once again, if you've got an idea of something you're interested, for your membership to be working on, be it Colorado or any other state, really give us a call, because our staff want to talk to you about what might be possible. We're going to have, if you've never done a grant with us before, we're going to have somebody that's going to, we've got staff that can help you with that process, that can answer your questions. I guess that's where we're definitely not like the federal government. We actually want to help you get a grant. We want to help you get a grant. So we're going to work with you to see what you need to do that. Now, some organizations have never had agronomy folks. You've never, let's say you're in a state like that, folks. Maybe that's what we're working on, is just outreach to your members on X set of issues. It could be something as simple as that, where we're helping pay for a staff person for your state association. These are all possible. So please have that conversation with us, see what's possible. A couple years ago, I did a presentation for National Farmers Union, and it still scars me to this day. I was at their national meeting, and I once again said, ask us for money. Not a single person asked us for any money. And we had a lot of money. We have more now. We have a lot of great things, great projects going on across the ag landscape. There is not a state out of the 50 or territories. We're active in Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, etc. So if you've got ideas, please talk to us. Let's see what's possible, and we'll kind of go from there. Sorry about my mishaps on IT today. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Dave, for that presentation. Next, we have Paul Wolfe. Paul is a program officer at the Walton Family Foundation for the Environment Program, where he works on the Mississippi River Initiative on supply chain, forest restoration, and farm bill. Before joining the foundation, Paul worked for the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, focusing on crop insurance, agricultural conservation, and climate change. He also worked on sustainability and agriculture issues in the U.S. Senate for Senators Maria Cantwell and Tim Johnson. Paul holds a JD from Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law and a BA in political science from Gonzaga University. Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
I have to unmute myself. Thank you. I have to say, I will help with this one. It's Gonzaga University, but that's a common issue. Let me bring up my slides here. Okay. Okay, can we see that?
Yes.
Great. So again, yeah, Paul Wolfe with the Walton Family Foundation. I'm going to talk a little bit about our foundation and what we do and how we interact with agriculture and commodity groups. I'll first say to Dave's points to back that up. We actually do work with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation on a joint project with us and some corporate partners in the lower Mississippi River. Actually the Delta region, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, which is also happens to be where this picture is taken in the Cache River watershed down by Bayou de View, where I was a few weeks ago. So that is where that is. So we have some things you'll note, some similarities with NFWF and some different things. So we are a private family foundation, the Walton Family Foundation. We are a family-led foundation that works in 3 areas: K-12 education, environment, and home region. So K-12 works on school choice. Environment works in 3 areas that I will talk more about. And the home region works in the northwest portion of Arkansas and a few counties in the Delta. So we represent the philanthropic work of the Walton family, which is separate from the Walmart Foundation and the Walmart, the company, and from any individual philanthropic entities of the family members. So this is we do the work that all 20 plus members of the Walton family have come together and decided they want to work on together. So a few things I thought in prepping for this, was asked to talk about working with foundations and working with grant making. And so I thought I'd kind of define a few things that might be helpful. So we are a private grant making foundation, legally speaking, which means that our funds are derived from either private or corporate funding. So it doesn't, we don't take donations from the general public. That would be a public foundation. So like you might see, we're different from that. We are led by a board of family members, and then we have a committee of individual members for each of the environment, education, and home region programs that give us guidance and approve grants. We practice something called strategic philanthropy. So that's important because we don't, unlike NFWF might do, we don't put out public requests for applications for funding. We have a strategy to achieve our goals, which I will talk about and go into some detail about, that we set. And then we go out and try to find organizations that align with that strategy and can achieve the goals of that strategy, and talk to them and work with them around grants. And specifically in those grants, we use something called outputs and outcomes, which in different forms is generally what foundations use, versus another option, which is general operating grants, where a foundation gives a amount of money to another organization, a nonprofit generally, to provide them funding for their operations, and they decide how they want to spend that money aligned with their goals. And the other option is usually to have something we call a project, where we agree on a series of outputs, things that are in the control of the organization. They would do putting out a report, conducting a study, conducting a poll, doing some sort of work that is complete with the control of that organization. And then the outcomes are the whole things that we all hope that happen as a result of that grant, that you do a study that looks at a certain topic, and then that because of that study, some changes or some other action happens that might be beyond the control of the organization that did the study. They might have some say over it, but not all the say. So that is generally how we operate. As far as process goes, we as a foundation, I am a program officer with the foundation who manages a portfolio of grants, and also seeks and to make other new grants, and seeks out organizations that are aligned that can help us help achieve the goals that we have set out for ourselves. And so I am the first line of how we do that within the foundation. So we have 4 program officers within my portion of the Mississippi River Initiative, which is where I work, and I will talk more about. And then we have a total of about 25 staff members within the environment program that work on seeking out new grants, developing grants, and making grants, and then managing grants after they're made. So those are just some of the basics of what we do. So the environment program within the Walton Family Foundation has 3 parts to it: oceans, which is working on sustainable fisheries domestically and internationally. The Colorado River Program, which is working to address the rapidly declining supplies of water in the Colorado River based on how you effectively manage that river for nature and for the communities that rely on it. And then the Mississippi River, we work on improving water quality and addressing climate change in the Mississippi River Basin. And we do that mostly through, as you'll see, and I'll talk about, we do that through a focus on agriculture. We don't really work on urban or municipal wastewater or drinking water quality issues. We focus mostly on nutrient and soil runoff and how they contribute to water quality in the Mississippi River Basin. So we are in year 2 of a new 5-year strategy called Strat 25 that was rolled out in 2021. And so that is what I will focus on from here. So this slide probably won't mean much, but it is kind of described as a transition from our previous strategy to our new strategy and how we develop that. So we develop goals around how we measure water quality. Previously, that has been acres of conservation practices, but we are kind of broadening that under the new strategy to be more inclusive and to look at other ways to judge our success other than just pure acres of practice adoption. So this is we call this the house slide. It is essentially the structure and framework for how we decide where we spend money in our grant making. So as I mentioned, that strategic philanthropy. So our grant making stems from this strategy to protect water resources in the face of climate change in order to support healthier ecosystems, more vibrant communities for generations. So we do that in 4 strategies. The first is driving innovation, which has 2 strategies: nature-based solutions and technology and data for sustainability. So nature-based solutions, much of our work now encompasses restoration on the Gulf Coast to restore the delta below New Orleans for hurricane resiliency through diverting Mississippi River water out of the river to rebuild the delta. And then the second example that I often use is restoration of marginal farmlands that frequently flood in the delta region of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana to bottomland hardwood forest. So that, there's also we were not part of it, but another example is the well-known collaboration that did some levee setbacks in Missouri to address flooding in Nebraska. So those are the kind of things, using the nature abilities to reduce flood risk and improve water quality. The second here is technology and data, which translates into using better use of data and collaboration across USDA and the private sector to better understand the benefits to farmers and to the environment of conservation practices. So showing how the adoption of conservation practices, including cover crops, reduced tillage, no-till, extended rotations, things like that can improve the sustainability of the farmer, reducing yield variability, increasing resilience to climate change. So things like that through data. Promoting market systems for sustainability, which is one area that I work on. Increasing the demand for sustainably grown commodities. Working with corporations and partners to build the demand for those crops grown with conservation practices. And then the second part of that is building the supply, helping farmers and ranchers and expand the adoption of conservation practices through technical assistance, research, and other programs to help farmers share their expertise with other farmers. And that's some of the work that we've done with different commodity groups at the state and national level to highlight the champions and the farmers doing conservation as a way to help show others what might be possible. The third is policy. So like if we cannot our funds cannot be used to lobby on specific legislation, but it can be used to develop the thought leadership about how federal agricultural policy and funding should be allocated. Building up those kinds of materials and people that think about these topics and can help advocate for program operation, adequate funding for programs like EQIP and CSP that help cost share practice adoption, and driving those funds and the policy towards water quality improvement. And then the last one is a kind of a cross-cutting strategy that we have that is focused on a few different areas and is a little bit of a catch-all. So community engagement and leadership, developing diverse representation and leaders in the conservation community, working with our peer funder community to leverage our dollars with others to have greater impact, and then sharing the work that we do out with the greater community around us, so that everybody knows what we're doing. So that's a kind of in a nutshell what the environment program of the foundation does and how we do our work. And I would be happy to take questions if we're going to do that. So.
Thank you, Paul, for that presentation. I will invite the attendees to turn on their videos for the Q&A portion. We'll open it up to those attending with any questions.
So as Nick might be able to get on the camera in a minute, I'll just go ahead and jump in and start by just asking. I mean, it is a very different approach with the Walton Family Foundation. Really not, Dave repeated multiple times, call us, and Walton Family Foundation was a little bit, we seek you out. How best can somebody that might be interested in working with Walton Family Foundation come to your attention? And then that's a question, of course, for Paul. And then for Dave, when you're asking to have folks call you, at what stage in the process? It sounds like because you're interested in partnerships, maybe you want it to be early on, but if you can maybe just elaborate a little bit on that. And I guess we'll let maybe Michaela, if you can help find if Dave disappeared, if he had a technical issue, if he's coming back, but maybe Paul can start. Here he comes. Sure.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't want it to maybe come off as a don't call us, we'll call you situation, but certainly, we seek out partners and potential grantees that can align with our work. So I think, looking at what I showed today and looking at our website and seeing if, and we also have a grantee list on our website. You can search through the grantees and you can see the kind of work you do with in the context of the Mississippi or the Colorado River basins. That is we are always interested in listening. We just don't we don't say we want to address water quality in the Mississippi River Basin, give us your best idea of how to do that. We feel that we have a way to address that. And example is we have worked with the Illinois corn growers for several years on their sustainability platform that works with farmers to collect data on specific fields and work they're doing around conservation to have insights about what works and what doesn't work around conservation. And we've also worked with the American Soybean Association on their programs to do first-time cover crop, help farmers with 40-acre first-time cover crop programs where they handle all of it. You just tell them where to put it, and that makes it easier as an entree into trying something out that you might not otherwise be able to try. So those are a couple examples. But we, and part of the reason is that we approach this way is that we have restricted geographies, and we even within the whole Mississippi River Basin, which is many states, we focus a lot of our work in the I states and obviously the Delta region, the lower basin, and less so in the plains states and farther northwest in the Missouri River drainage. So, that is kind of where we work, and first step is seeing yourself in that space.
Great, thanks. And Dave, I don't know if you caught the question. I just would say, because the approach from NFWF and Walton Family Foundation is quite different, and just was wondering, where in the stage you want folks to call you, but do they call you with a half-baked idea? Do they call you with a fully cooked idea? What stage in the process would you prefer hearing from people?
We're not picky.
Okay.
We're okay not being picky. I'm going to actually feed on something that Paul mentioned. One of the things, you look at Illinois corn. We started doing grants with Illinois corn probably a little over 10 years ago. And I'm just throwing a number out there. We've worked with that crew for a while, but it was partially on a challenge that we got from Walton Family. Paul's boss, Maura McDonald, former employee of National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, as well. But Maura, we were in some talks with her, and she says, you know what? I really, really want to get, I want to see about trying to get more commodity organizations for those discussions with their members. We want to look at the possibilities of how, an agronomist, conservation technical professional might work within one of those organizations. And so the challenge was to go out and try and start working with more and more commodity organizations, be it pork, beef, corn, soybean, it doesn't matter. We wanted to see what was possible, and it's really blossomed from there. And, on top of that, you look at all the great things they've been able to do, and, it's just really wonderful success. And really, on your question, Julie, any part of the process, have a discussion with us. If you're, just curious about maybe looking at our, getting online with us, we'll look at some of the different programs we have in your respective state's area, and see what's possible. That's all we can do, is have that discussion.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Paul and David, I want to thank you for taking your time out today and talking with us. And I'm glad Julie brought it up on half-baked ideas, because I'm full of those. Very rarely do they get to the full baked stage. But there are some things that, we're looking at addressing here in Colorado. We are very different than much of our Eastern and Midwestern farming cousins. It's much higher, much drier out here. And I mean higher in elevation, since we're talking Colorado. We're looking at, thank you, Julie, somebody finally got it.
That was slow.
We are looking at exploring a lot of soil health. We're diving in with our Colorado Department of Ag and in a soil health partnership like program where we're trying to incentivize farmers to adopt more conservation practices so that we can build that soil health, build soil armor, reduce soil tillage, incorporation of livestock, living plant matter, diversity of crops, diversity of plants at the same time. And so there's a lot of things that we're trying to help our farmers implement on those acres and grow those acres year after year. A couple of things that really come to mind is how do you do cover crops in an arid region? That learning curve is extremely steep. There's a lot of hesitancy there because we could do a crop rotation like we do on my farm of corn or of wheat, corn, summer fallow, and just letting that idle for a year. Moisture is a very key element in that success. And if you have a growing cover crop, do you have enough left? I'm not saying you do or don't, we don't know. And that's the problem, is nobody's willing to jump in head first when there is some significant production risks on that end. To that end, you know, how do you do cover crops in some of our irrigated fields, like a furrow row irrigated field? I think we've seen some stuff done in the Front Range, but you know, there's just, with our irrigation system, the way it's built, the efficiency is built on inefficiency, where you can reuse that water on farms 5, 6, maybe even 7 times. And so how do we incorporate those cover crops in a ditch or furrow irrigated field when you know you have to go through and at least ditch it, besides planting it, so you can get that water through all the trash and all the crops? So a lot of really a lot of ideas that I've got rocking and up into my head, and it's like a partnership with either the Walton Family Foundation or NIFWIF, you know, might help us push that a little bit farther as we develop these programs and develop the relationships with the farmers out here in Colorado to try and implement these more conservation, soil health minded practices.
No, I love that. It's, you know, one thing that I think we all understand in agriculture is what works in one area, or even, you know, farms that are even next to each other, it might not work on the next door farm for whatever reasons, because of the way they operate, or maybe it's their soils, or like you said, that, you know, a variety of factors. Look, we've got an office. Well, we did have an office in Denver. We have staff in Denver, in Fort Collins. Chris used to work for West runs that region for us, our Rocky Mountain region. He used to work for Colorado Cattlemen. You know, we're running a whole mess of money with the Colorado Restore program, and they're not looking for cookie cutters. They're looking for, you know, those crazy ideas that might work. So I'd say we just need to get you together with Chris and Seth that are out there, and just, you know, give me an email or send me an email from the presentation, and I will connect you with those characters. We'll all get on the phone and just talk and see what's possible.
And, you know, it's nice, Nick, that you, you know, brought up, I think so often folks think Colorado and think water quantity issues and to, you know, water use. And so it's nice to look at how can you build out some ideas to really work on improving soil health, which is just as important there. So that's great.
And Julie, I might add just one more thing is, you know, it just tacks on to the arid region. You know, a lot of our production takes place over the Ogallala Aquifer. Mm-hmm. And for years and years and years, everybody's been saying it's only going to last another 20 years. And because of that, and it's still here, you know, 60 years later. And because of that, there's a lot of, you know, hesitation when people hear that. But that's not the case. It's dropping, and we're losing productivity out of our Ogallala. And what can we do? It's a very important region. It's very important for the rural economic health. It's very important for our ability to produce crops, whether it be corn, soybean, hay, for the livestock that is there. I mean, we have some of the largest feeding operations in the nation, and that provides the affordable, sustainably raised beef that so many people put on their plates each and every meal. And so it's a very big concern of how do we utilize this resource now, but also also take measures so that future generations have this opportunity for the success of their operations and the robust communities that they need to thrive.
Absolutely. You know, Rachel, if you don't have a question, I have a general question to ask Dave and Paul before we wrap up, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, we invited Paul and Dave to be with us because they are such good friends of corn already. And but we know, you know, that there are a lot of other foundations out there. And so for those state staff that might be interested in considering how to pursue grant opportunities further and really explore other options, I guess I'm just wondering if each of you could give us, like, what would be your 1 or 2 top tips, just generally speaking, if somebody really wants to go further in this area of seeking out, additional grant type support, of what they should keep in mind to do that as they approach it. I mean, you gave some great specific guidance for working specifically with your organizations, but just more generally speaking, because I know you guys both know a lot of, the program officers from other foundations, and probably have some good ideas to share. And you're on mute, Paul.
It's a good question, because what I was thinking as I was listening to Dave talk about it after I talked, and I was very specific to our foundation, and I think that's not totally helpful in all cases, because I think there is some more generally applicable. I think my experience working with commodity groups, it has been that you don't do a lot with philanthropy, and I think that's why we're here, is because it's generally not as much where you guys have worked in the past, because you have other revenue streams, to support your work, where we work with a lot of organizations that are basically supported completely by a variety of foundations, and so they are constantly chasing the dollar of the next foundation. So there are a lot of other foundations out there. I will say there are not a lot that work in the Mississippi River Basin and do the kind of work we do, but there are a lot, and there's a lot that are smaller at the state level. And I think there is opportunity there to work with them. But I think the number one thing I would say is to talk to your partners that or people you work with, or in your networks that work with foundations that might be funded about foundations, about doing things together. When you were talking about, Nicholas was talking about soil health and that work in the arid regions. One is we don't do a lot of work on research. We don't do a lot of research because it takes a long time, and we kind of feel there's a lot of other state and federal sources that do research, but there are foundations that absolutely focus on research, and that's what they do. I mean, FFAR, for Foundation for Food and Ag Research, we partner with them because they need a dollar for dollar. They have I don't want to tell them they have lots of money. I'll tell you guys they have money, but they has to be matched a dollar for dollar. And we have funded, and I know lots of other foundations fund the match that's needed. Soil Health Institute, I don't know that they're a funding partner, but they're a thought partner. So talking to people, talking to a lot of people about your idea may lead to something. I mean, that's what we do every day. It's what we go to. I see Dave at conferences. Almost every conference I go to, he's there, because we're just constantly talking to people, and that's where the ideas get developed, because you find other partners, because you might not be able to do it yourself, but you find the thinking partner, and then they might know somebody that has funding, or have an idea of where they could make a funding pitch, and that might be us, or it might be somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of foundations in this country. But finding and aligning with them doesn't happen overnight. I mean, for our size, I'm still constantly amazed when I meet somebody from, something comes up that I've never heard of before that I think would be very helpful. And it does happen, so, it just takes some time, but so having those conversations and about those ideas with as many people as possible.
Paul's spot on. I mean, it's easy for us to, for our foundations to talk about the opportunities, but, we go to other foundations as well to partner with all the time. The Margaret Cargill Foundation, not the Cargill Foundation, Margaret Cargill, different foundation, but that foundation has worked with us a lot on grasslands work in Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota. As just an example. Wrigley, we have a large program in the Chicago area, and it's basically all about waterways in the Chicago region. Well, that's what the Wrigley Foundation wanted to get involved in. And you've got to be able to you'd be shocked at how many of them are out there. And they're all shapes and sizes. You'll have some that are you've never heard of and have all kinds of money, or ones that you've heard of that have very little money. Part of it is trying to find out who's out there. But one thing I would say within ag and conservation is this. A lot of the folks from these foundations need education. I think that at the end of the day, they're more than willing to do grants, but they need a little bit of education because their knowledge of agriculture is extremely limited. And there's so much that they don't understand about how things actually work for a true farmer operator. And so I think that's something that's really important, is educating them, giving them an idea of, this is how our, if I'm Nick, we're going to go back to you in Colorado. This is how Colorado corn growers operates, but let's look at some of the things that are facing our growers and some of the ways they go and work with those things. Those folks want to know that. They want to meet the farmers. And so I throw that out, that there's a little bit of time and effort you got to put in to make these things pay off in the long run. So,
but it
just
sounds
some
like,
quick comments.
yeah, good. And I mean, it sounds like a real theme is just not just the partnerships, but just really just that encouraging that networking with other people at the more local level, other nonprofits, partners, but I'm hearing, really looking at how you can maximize resources. And that's really working with others who are doing the same thing and have the shared objectives that your foundations have, that, for goals for conservation improvements. But then it just, what I'm hearing is to be able to leverage the resources to really maximize the return. And so I appreciate your comments from both of you. I hope it's encouraging for other state staff as they listen to this recording later.
Well, we are at top of the hour, so I just want to thank our speakers, Dave and Paul. This was very, this is a great resource for our states to hear more about and know that it's available. I will have the PowerPoint presentations available, and Dave also provided a fact sheet that they just recently finished up, so I will have that available to send out to state staff. And if you want to connect with them, I'm happy to provide that connection with Dave or Paul here in the near future, if you would like that. Thank you again for attending. Thank you for our speakers, and this will conclude our webinar for today.
Thank you.
Thanks.